On the Build Show today, prepping for Google Fiber at your new construction or remodel house. You know, whether you're getting fiber or whether you're getting standard internet, there's a couple steps you want to take now at this phase of construction to make sure that you're all set to get the fastest internet possible at your house. Today's Build Show, prepping for fiber. Let's get going. Okay, so most neighborhoods in America have something like this coming into the house. This is coax, which for a long time was our TV and then our internet. And in this particular neighborhood, that's coming from the back of the house. But on this house under construction, we're at a project I call the Reisinger build. I actually have Google Fiber in this neighborhood, and the fiber was added to the street. This pink line right here is my temporary line for construction. Eventually this will get buried and then go into the house, but for construction I mounted a box to the outside. We're actually going to move this in probably today. This converts that fiber to an internet signal, and then this pink line you see here is my fiber into the house for temporary. Now when the house completes though, that fiber line that comes from the street will get buried, and then Google or whatever your internet service provider is will put a box on the outside of the house. And then to the inside, we're gonna have all the work that I'm doing as a builder or remodeler. And that's what we're mainly talking about today. Okay, so in my hand, I've got traditional Cat 6. This would be, you know, what we use for Ethernet inside the house. And I've got fiber. Now, fiber is the absolute fastest, and that's what Google's bringing into the house. Now, I wanna run that same speed into the house, not just to the house. So we're gonna show you how to set up for Google Fiber, but we're also gonna prep this house just in case for whatever reason the client doesn't go with Google Fiber, goes with a traditional service provider, which means I also need a coax cable in here, and I wanna future-proof this house, meaning 20 years from now, I never even heard of fiber 20 years ago, right? This wasn't on our radar to run this. So I want to make sure 20, 30, 50 years from now, whatever the next technology is, I've got a way to run that from here at the back corner of the house where those providers might come in to an important place of the house. Let's go in the house and we're going to find Lee, my expert, and talk about what cables we're going to use and why. So I'll meet you in there. Hey Lee, where are you?
Hey Matt, I'm over here at the D-Mark.
Ah, there you are. All right guys, if you don't remember, Lee is my all things IT guy. He knows a little bit of everything. So Lee, we're talking about bringing Google Fiber to this house, and we already have temporary Google Fiber for construction. What do we need to know about these wires and getting them to the outside?
Yeah, so you ordered Google Fiber, they temporarily put it on a pole outside. So what we're doing is extending it into the house, where traditionally they would mount it to the side of the house and they would walk away. But we want to move it into an air-conditioned space where then you or the homeowner can manage your electronic equipment, make upgrades.
That's right. So if you're in an existing house and you call to get fiber at your house, let's say you only have coax to the outside, you're switching providers, whatever, and you want to upgrade to the speed of fiber, the first thing they're going to do, correct me if I'm wrong, is drill into your house and bring a fiber line in, right?
Wherever they see fit. They're going to take a masonry bit and put a hole into your house for the ants.
Which I don't like, because then I can't seal it correctly. I'm not in charge of where it goes. I don't like someone else doing that. So what we're doing in this video is showing you where to put that. And speaking of where to put that, this is on the back corner of the house. And this is where we're actually going to move the fiber, the coax, to the outside. But first off, tell us what we need to know about fiber, because there's more than one option, right?
Yeah, correct. So Google Fiber uses single mode fiber. And that's because it's a long haul fiber that can go miles, kilometers, right? And still push high bandwidth video. Multi-mode is another fiber that's commonly used in short distances within an office building or a campus. So if you were to do this into your home with multi-mode fiber and then Google brought their single mode fiber, you'd have an issue because they're not going to mate up well together. So then you're going to be needing a media converter to convert the single mode to the multi-mode. Now you've got a problem. So we went ahead and ran single mode through this Smurf duct into your air-conditioned attic. So now Google can properly extend the fiber to the D-Mark.
Now a couple things I want to mention on that. Lee said to our conditioned space, you could in theory run this to a hot attic, but the problem is that equipment's going to be hot. not a good idea. So you really want to run it into a space that's part of the air conditioned space of the house, which I am here in this conditioned attic space. The other thing I want to mention is Lee actually yelled at me right before we started this section because I stepped on the fiber. How cautious do you need to be about this fiber, Lee? How much do I need to treat it with kid gloves?
Yeah, you should be very cautious not to step on it, not to kink it. It is glass, so you could break it.
Yep.
The construction of it is, it does have this aramid yarn in it, which is a protective yarn.
Okay.
And kind of prevents you from crunching it. But still, when you see somebody go step on it, and it's amazing, you run it across the floor and people just step on it. They don't really pay attention. So
that makes sense.
Be careful with it.
Now, I'm noticing that there's 4 little strands in here. Does that mean that I actually have 4 fiber connections into the house?
Correct. So Google Fiber is going to use, I believe, 1 strand.
Okay.
But now we've got spares.
So there's a little bit of backup in this particular one. And then what does this piece of metal do in there? Is that just protection?
Yeah, just another piece of protection, right?
Okay.
They've just built in a little layer of, so you didn't damage it, but I still barked at you.
Gotcha, no, that's smart. So we could, in theory, run this without conduit from the demarc to the location, but I think the conduit's just extra protection. Let's just be cautious. Now, we're running 2 wires though. What's the reason why we're using fiber and coax?
Because most other providers are using coax.
Right.
So Spectrum, AT&T,
Grande,
I think Grande, a lot of them are still using coax.
Yep.
Google Fiber, you're getting the fastest speeds, you know.
So if you're building or remodeling, smart to send both to the outside. And then the last thing that we're going to be doing here is we're going to be running some conduit to the outside as well. And let's talk about that real quick. This is 2-inch PVC, the same that you'd use for a vent pipe in a house under construction that your plumber is going to put through the roof. I like that because it's a very stout, you know, it's hard to damage this on the job. We also want to do sweeps as much as possible instead of a hard 90-degree fitting. And so we're going to run this sweep 90 to the outside with a 2-inch pipe. And this is actually going to be an empty conduit, Lee. My thought was, you know, I want this house to be around 100, 200 years from now. I'd never heard of fiber when I started in construction 30 years ago. So what happens when 30 years from now there's something that's better than that? I want a spot to be able to get in the house. So let's go ahead and get the guys to get this out. I'm gonna grab Nathan. We're gonna actually run these to the outside and then we'll pick this up from the outside of the house with a couple tips on how to get these through the house correctly. All right, Lee, we got our wires out here to the demarc. This is where eventually Google Fiber will connect on this board that we made. Talk to me about how we ran that fiber.
Yeah, so we ran this single mode fiber from your air conditioned attic, which in somebody else's home might be an air conditioned utility closet or a bedroom closet where you're gonna put your electronics. It's single mode, so we ran it outside. This will be the demarcation point where you said Google Fiber will trench.
Yep.
And it'll be just a connection, just 2 connectors, so they can extend their service into the house.
And that's a home run, meaning there's no breaks in that fiber at all. And we're cautious with the fiber not to bend it, snap it, step on it, that sort of thing. And then the coax is also in that orange conduit, that Smurf tube, just for protection to that same spot in the attic. And then this, Lee, is my kind of nod to the future proofing I mentioned. This is just Schedule 40 PVC. We glued it. We only used 2 elbows. I think that's a good thing to mention. You don't want a bunch of elbows because if we try and push a fish tape through there, it's going to be really hard if we have more than 2 elbows. And we use the Street 90, which is more of a gentle 90 than a hard 90 on there. Once the board gets on, this is our mounting board, so my siding can come down to this. I'll have insulation, I'll have a rain screen. This is the final mounting board. This is just a piece of cedar that we primed on all sides, and this will get painted to match my James Hardy siding. Then I'll cut the pipe and put this on, which is a final cap. Now, Lee, I'm gonna put one of these both on the outside and the inside to make sure that we're bug tight and airtight, right? And then what we've done here in terms of drilling 1 hole per thing, this allows me to use liquid flash on these penetrations at the zip sheathing to make that my last line of defense for air. If you want to learn more about that, go check out my sheathing episode of the Reisinger build where we talked more about this being our air barrier. But once this is complete, now we're ready for Google Fiber to get in the house. And really, no one should have to do anything this house differently in terms of drilling or putting any of their wire in there for, I'm going to call 50 years. What do you think? You think I'm being aggressive?
No, I think you're right. You could even mount a Starlink on the side of the house and go through that pipe.
That's a great point. You could do Starlink in here.
Dish, anything. Here's your future access points.
That's right. Lee, big thanks for coming out to help me with the tech side of this video. If you don't know Voltek, Lee is the inventor of their system. We talked about it on the Reisinger build episode coming up where we're talking electrical, but it's VoltekInc.com. This is an Austin-based company that actually makes their product in Austin. And oh, by the way, this house that we've been working on, this is the Reisinger build. We've got a full video series. We're building this house from foundation to finish in a series sponsored by Builders First Source. So go check out that series. And by the way, this will be the show house for Build Show Live this November 2024 in Austin, Texas. So you actually can get an under construction tour just a few months from now of this house prior to sheetrock. With that being said, guys, follow us on Facebook and Instagram. Otherwise, we'll see you next time on the Build Show.